I can tell you right now that working with a celeb is, in my opinion, way harder than working with an athlete. Way more difficult. There's no excuses. Like when you work with someone who has this level of excellence, no matter what they do, whether they're an actor, whether they're building their physique, they're performing at a high level. It's this. It's going into that job. It's going into that game. It's going into that event, knowing you did everything in your power to be successful.
What was the difference between training Ryan for Deadpool 1, Deadpool 2, and now Deadpool 3?
You know, we've been working together now for 15 years, and
what are factors that you think contribute to your level of discipline?
if you want a good, healthy body, sometimes, you got to go into the gym and practice things that you're not used to. And
what does it take to build a superhero body? What does it take to maximize your mindset? How do you make the difficult decisions that you don't necessarily want to, but you know that you have to? Today we're going to learn, and I'm excited to introduce a one-of-a-kind human being, someone that's been putting out premium content when it comes to building your body, building your mind, making difficult but healthy choices, and someone who's got a vast resume of training celebrities, athletes, and everyday Avengers, if you will, trying to make the most of themselves. And I couldn't be more humbled to finally have the opportunity to connect with Mr. Don Saladino. How are you today, sir?
Jonathan, I appreciate it. Nice intro. Thank you very much for that.
When it comes to the difference between high performers in general and we'll call them everyday athlete, what are the things, what are the habits, what are the rituals and routines that the elite performers, the celebrities, the high earners, whoever you come across and however you define elite performer, what is the difference in their regimens relative to the everyday athlete?
There's no excuses. There's no, oh, this can wait. Oh, this is going to be put on the back burner. Like when you work with someone who has this level of excellence, no matter what they do, whether they're an actor, whether they're building their physique, whether they're a professional athlete and they're performing at a high level, most of them, like 99% of them, are going to come in with this level of focus and attention to detail that you're not going to see from many other people, right? It's not, oh, you should be able to have some ice cream, right? It's like, of course you can. Like when you're not training to be on the cover of this, or when you're not going to be in this movie that millions of people are going to see, or it's not really about the ice cream or having that cheat meal. It's about this, and I think that's what people are forgetting. It's not about, they should, their body's great. You should be able to have that. It's this, it's going into that job. It's going into that game. It's going into that event, knowing you did everything in your power to be successful. And that gives you a level of confidence, right? Or if you're going into it, you're like, did I really prepare for this? Probably could have done a little bit more. Right there, I'm automatically putting my guard down. So I think I did hear Gunnar talk about this once. I think the word he used was undeniable. I want to say he used the word there, undeniable, in the sense of like, and Gunnar's a very good friend of mine. I mean, but again, I met Gunnar 2 years ago at the Strong event in New York. Gunnar stayed with me out here. I've stayed with him and his family. Think of Gunnar like a brother now. Like when you go on very similar paths in your career and you work with similar people, and we just sat around talking, and it's like, oh my God, I know this story. It's like, oh, and you're laughing because you're like, oh yeah. And even with the clients and even with the people we deal with, the experience, it's so similar. Like they have something in their vision. That's it. Like there's no, and even friends of mine who made the NBA or playing professional baseball or might have been in the NHL at one point, like their level of focus and attention to detail was on a level that most people are just not going to want to sacrifice. But they do that. When I ask them all, or I've spoken to them all about, they don't do it because they feel like they have to. They do it because they want to, right? Like people are like, I remember for years they were asking, isn't it hard to eat the way you eat and be disciplined the way you're disciplined? I'm like, it'd be hard not to. This is part of me. This is part of my makeup. This is part of who I am. It's like, yeah, I went on vacation a couple weeks ago and for 7 days was on a ski mountain and snowboarding and having a couple beers and eating normal food. And by the time of the end of the trip, I'm like, all right, get me home. But like when I was away, I was still maintaining some gym sessions and I was still doing saunas and jumping in the cold plunges and eating a lot of veggies and drinking a lot of water and having my fun in other categories. But then when I got home, oh my God, it's like nothing's in my way. Even to the point where I'll tell people like it, even bedtimes, it's like at a certain time, I don't care. It could be the greatest show I've ever seen in my life on. I'm like, my wife and I never finish a movie. We never, ever, ever finish a movie in one shot. I'm always falling asleep or have to go to bed. It'll normally take us 2 nights to watch a movie. Just what we do. And she understands it. She's the best. And thank God for her. But like, it's that discipline that I think allows people to be excellent in what they do.
What made you want to jump into fitness in the first place?
Yeah, I'm not sure if my journey started for me when I graduated college or if my journey started for me at a really young age, dealing with some issues as a young kid, a hearing problem, a stuttering problem. And I think that's what kind of really molded me into the, world of athletics. And I think it kind of put a little bit of a chip on my shoulder at a young age that allowed me to work really hard at the things that I do. I mean, no matter what it was, it could have been a sport, it could have been, working at a catering hall at a young age and sweeping floors and just wanting to be known as the best sweeper. It's just competition was always something I enjoyed, but it wasn't always about winning. I didn't like winning was as an athlete, it becomes an important thing, but I would almost, rather, have that performance and know that I put in my best effort, right? If I knew I put in my best effort and we lost, and we put in our best effort, it was still a good feeling where, you'd say to yourself, you went at it with everything that you had and you did the best that you could. The example I like to give is like, I'd rather, like, I play golf and I'd rather play a golf round and lose and shoot my best round than win and just play like complete shit and have the guy not put up his best round. Like for me, part of being a human being is going in and putting in that effort and working hard and, trying to accomplish something. And it doesn't always relate to winning. Like I love winning and winning's important, but it's not always the most important thing. So this whole journey started for me, at a very young age, but I think fitness, the word fitness, I decided to make that a profession when I was 21 years old. I graduated college and I got into something that at first, when it was brought up to me, I said, well, are people making money doing that? Can you make money doing that? I didn't even really know. And when I heard that, it was like, all right, well, don't worry about the money. Like you never worried about money. And I was like, yeah, you're right. I always kind of followed things that I was passionate about. And to this day, it's even when I'm looking at business deals, I have to love a product. I have to love the team. I have to believe in it. It's pretty difficult for me to stand behind something if, I don't believe in it or something I'm not going to use. So, I think a lot of these rules that I've kind of established at a really young age that I started following is something that it's extended in my career. And fitness, interesting because fitness started as just, training for baseball and training to look good. And then, out of nowhere, I realized I can make a big difference in people's lives. And then fitness became so much more than that. I mean, if you were to look back at my career in 1999 when it started, and you were to tell me everything I'm doing right now, it didn't really exist. It was, like these things now like didn't exist back then. Like if you were to turn to me in the year 2000 and say, oh, you're gonna own a facility in your backyard. You'll close your gym. You'll own a facility in your backyard. The first thing I'd say is like, oh wait, I could train people out there. And they're like, oh no, you're not going to be training people out there. I'm going to be like, well, wait a second. Like, I own a commercial grade facility here. How am I not training people? How am I making money? And they're like, oh well, you're going to be online. I'm going to be like, what's online? Like, oh, that internet thing that you plug the cable into the wall, and it's like, all right, yeah, no, you're going to be doing Zooms. What's a Zoom? Well, you're going to be hosting retreats. You're going to have this retreat where you have 150 people coming from 30 different countries. Oh, so I'm going to be traveling all the time. No, you're not going to travel that much. A little bit. How am I going to recruit all these people? Right? Like all this shit didn't exist. But that's the point. Like I speak to these young people who are trying to like be entrepreneurial or they're trying to build their business. And I'm like, sometimes like having that nicely buttoned 5-year, 10-year, 20-year plan, like it doesn't exist for too many.
So, can you speak to the value of reputation and why it matters so much, particularly in the fitness industry?
Listen, there are people that I know or I've been friends with that, they're people that just want to take withdrawals. And, I've really done a good job in cutting those people off. Like when you're someone in this business or in life that just wants to take, and you just show that level of like selfishness, it's not something I want to be around. And ironically, when you're talking about Hugh, I ran into the guy who passed him over to me. I was in LA on a conference 3 weeks ago, speaking for Life Fitness 4 weeks ago. He was in the crowd. And I was like, oh my God. We hugged him and I thanked him. I still did. I was like, thank you for hooking me with him, because that opened the doors for me to work with so many other people. So I think you can never forget where you come from. But yeah, I remember Hugh came to me on the floor and was like, hey man, I'd like to work with you. He saw me training, and at first I was like, oh my God, you train with my buddy. And he was like, no, you don't understand. I'm like, let me talk to my buddy and this and that. I was almost kind of offended by it. And when I didn't realize was that my buddy was moving. My buddy was like, no, Don, I'm leaving, you idiot. Like, I'm having triplets and I'm out of here. And I was like, oh, okay. And I looked at Hugh and I said, sure. So I started working with him. And yeah, listen, I mean, training a celebrity is no different than training anyone else. I mean, I think there's some challenges with scheduling, and there's some challenges with where the goal is kind of always changing throughout the year. But I worked with Hugh for a year. I saw him recently in London. He's got a great trainer from Texas. And I was with Ryan Reynolds in London. So we all kind of got to kind of hang out. And I kind of reminded him that he gave me Ryan, and he started laughing, and we just had a nice conversation. So yeah, listen, it's fun to work with those people, but I didn't get into this business to be a celebrity trainer. It's not something I ever aspired to do. It was just a human being came to me with an objective in mind, and I was able to help them get from point A to point B.
Side note, how excited are you for the new Deadpool 3 movie?
Be fun. It'll be fun. It's like I'm more excited because I know the work that Ryan puts into it. So he's so passionate about it. And I got to see him on set again, and I get to see him putting his love into it. And Sean Levy, the director, phenomenal, just an amazing talent. And just to be able to sit there behind the camera for a little bit and watch their magic was for me, I think it was way cooler to see that than the actual finished product. I mean, I've seen all the movies and to be able to experience it, but to see the detail and the attention that these guys put into it, it's mind blowing.
Let's talk about discipline for a second. What are some of the catalysts or factors that you think contribute to your level of discipline? Maybe someone out there right now is struggling to develop their sense of discipline and they don't know where to start. How would you point them in the right direction?
Practice. It's like anything else. Like if you're going to start a language, you have to practice. If you're going to play golf or want to learn the game of golf, you have to practice. If you want to develop a good, healthy body, sometimes, you got to go into the gym and practice things that you're not used to. And there's going to be this learning curve, and it's going to suck. But you got to find that thing that brings you back. And that's why I feel like I've almost coined this term NSV, non-scale victories, with my people for the last 25 years. And I'm like, NSVs. My community knows what that means. But like, what does an NSV mean? It means like, what are the things that are going to allow you to quantify success, right? Is it jumping on a scale and looking at a number? Because I had a woman last year who lost 8 pounds of fat and gained 9 pounds of muscle in 1 year through, we measured that through a DEXA, which obviously there are critics out there and there, but it was a good way for us to quantify. So, all right. So she had, by the end of the year, she gained 1 pound, right? Like think about that. So if she was just jumping on a scale, she gained 1 pound. She lost 8 pounds of fat. She gained 9 pounds of muscle. She did 17 pound swing. Like and for a woman who's in her 130 pounds, that's extraordinary, like unbelievable. I think with me, what I try and do with people I work with is I try and connect success to a feeling, right? It's not a number. If an actor has to get ready for a role, it's not a body fat percentage. It's not a weight. It's a feeling. We establish a plan. We try and get their headspace into a good place, and we try and establish success with a feeling. And when we do that and we get them coming in and making it part of their lifestyle, then I'm kind of like, all right, game's over. Like it's a win when we can. And that's really what it comes down to, rewiring their mindset. So when someone is like wanting to want it, I would just say like, you've got to think about taking a little bit of a different approach. Maybe the workouts that you've been setting up for yourself or getting from someone are just too long. Right? Oh my God, every time I hit the 45-minute mark, I'm just miserable. I don't want to do it. I'm like, okay. So when I'm designing a program for that person, it'll be 35 minutes. All right, what are the other things that you don't like? Oh my God, I hate kettlebells. Okay, that's off the list. But some people, well, Don, you love kettlebells. Yeah, but like there's so many tools in the toolbox that why are we going to give someone they hate out of the gate? Like as a good coach, you should be able to curate something for them that they're going to enjoy. And training should be enjoyable. It should be hard work, but it should also be to the point where they're not miserable every time that they're coming in there. So I think when someone just wants to develop discipline, I think if they realize what they're doing isn't working, I think they have to look for a new strategy, talk to a new coach, or think about a new plan, and start experimenting with something that might seem a little bit shinier and new, allowing themselves to feel successful, even if it's with 10 minutes a day. And when they build that success, maybe they want more, maybe they want more. And I think discipline is really easy. To start developing in people if they see success, right? If it's like the reason why most people aren't motivated or they don't have the discipline to do it is I think is because they've just been spinning their wheels and they can't see progress, or they see all this progress in the beginning from something that's really hard, and then they go away for a weekend and they put that weight back on and they feel like they've lost all that work, and then that can become really debilitating. So I just think that their approach may be incorrect, and there's a different way to think about things and approach a plan that works for them.
I once heard you say this when I was designing my own workouts at the time by happenstance. Your workout should not look like a Chinese menu. And
I did say that.
it stayed with me. It still stays with me because I'm in this kind of session right now where I just ran a half, but I've done a couple marathons. I've done a few different endurance events, and weightlifting is a very, very big part, and calisthenics are a very big part of my regimen. And I also just love training in general, so I'm like, I got to do every movement all the time. But when you're forced to pick those 2, 3, 4 different moves and get like a fantastic session out of it, I got that from you. I'd look at the playbook app and I'd look at your content and I would see, oh, this is how he's curating. And then the other movement that really comes to mind when I think about your content, believe it or not, is actually kettlebell marching. Suitcase and
Yeah, kettlebell
overhead,
walks.
yeah.
Yeah, over, yeah, yeah, yeah,
Those
yeah.
those are a couple moves that I really attribute to you. Great, especially with the warm ups. Those were just a side note how I
Yeah,
personally implemented
cool.
some of your stuff. That's been really
Appreciate that.
helpful. Content creation is a very big part of your practice, obviously. How do you see the landscape shifting now, with algorithms or otherwise? How are you kind of preparing your content? What is your content strategy now in the face of this multi-platform universe that we all live in?
We spend hours a day on it, and I don't think you quantify success with content through like what your Instagram analytics are, right? Like for me, it's building that email list, and for me, it's really more back end, which no one will see, right? If I have, say, all in on my social media, 600,000 followers, can I convert those people to joining my community or downloading my programs? And content strategy is something that we spend a lot of time on. Like yesterday, my head of content and my wife and myself, we left the barn, we sat at the kitchen table, and we just literally for 90 minutes, we went through a schedule, we went through content ideas, we went through things we want to try. And I really think it's something that needs to be worked on every day. Like, and I know people, and I have friends that'll come in and they'll set content days, and they'll like shoot 5, 6 hours of stuff in one day with a camera person, and they put it up, and it's different and it's interesting, but it looks and feels the same to me. Like I can almost tell. I've become such a professional at this that I could just tell that they're going in and just checking boxes, checking boxes, checking boxes. And there's a level of like authenticity I feel like some of that content loses. I just feel like that when I'm in there watching it, I almost feel like this is all right. This is video number 13 that this person shot, and it's got the same look and the same feel. And we have different moods every day, and we have different ideas. And I just like the idea of coming in and shooting things that are a little bit more raw, a little bit dirtier, that doesn't need to feel like that you're shooting this IMAX quality movie set. And it's like, all right, we're sweating in between sets. And I'm like, listen, guys, and if I stutter, it's like, keep going. It's like, all right, well, cool. Like, guys, like I was working with a friend of mine today that last year had to have 2 epidural shots in his back. He was ex-hockey player for like a massive university and very, very good player, and just had some back problems. And he started training with me months ago, and today was the first day we had him doing kettlebell swings. And I was like, talking about that, and we were thinking about that, and we were going through ideas and what it kind of took us to get there, and like on the swing things I want him to work on. And it was just this very raw, dirty, like, all right, this is it. This is what coaching is. It's never this like clean, neatly buttoned, thing that we're giving to someone. I mean, coaching is about deviation. It's about, it sounds like a weird word, but it's about, you have that template, and how are you going to allow people to deviate from it and be successful? They travel, they don't sleep, they have their child in the hospital, something tragic happens. It's like, how are you going to allow them to pivot and allow them to keep feeling successful? Because that's part of life, right? That's part of the program, is to miss meals, or, part of the program for most is to miss workouts. And, part of the program is to come in one day and not feel motivated, or not feel like that they want to do it. And so how can you allow that person to recognize that this is just part of the process? And when they go and they eat like shit on a Saturday night, rather than junking out Sunday, Monday, Tuesday because they're depressed about it, just saying like, yeah, that's part of the program. And then Sunday they wake up and they're kind of back on the horse, and a day or two later, they're like, "Oh my God, I'm glad I did that." So that's what I really want to teach a lot of people, is that, it's not about perfection. It's not about, always progressing. No human being's ever done that. It's never happened. You don't have, there's never been a person that every session has lifted more weight, or has continued to eat better, or has nailed their macros every single day. Like, it doesn't happen. So, but the ones that do it really well are the ones that incorporate that one word. It's consistency. When they make it part of their life and they can be consistent, whether it's the gym, whether it's eating, whether it's business, whether it's focusing on a project, whatever it is, if you can be consistent with it and understand that mistakes are part of it all, you're gonna find yourself in a really good place.
I have personal questions that I'm curious about, but just because I get this question so often, I'm going to pose it to you. It's a fact pattern, as we say in legal practice. Male between 50 to 60 years old, curious about getting fit, likes to swim, play basketball, physical ailments, but wants to take a step towards a healthier lifestyle. Likes to snack on nuts, grab a beer, but he's curious about getting healthier. How can he spend that time productively in and outside of the gym with certain ideas or high level recommendations that you think could be productive for this particular individual?
I don't really know if level recommendations are needed. I think maybe it's taking that minimalistic approach. And I think years ago, I had a good buddy of mine who's almost 50, very successful, comes into me, and he's in my office, takes his shirt off, and he's like, he threw a really weird request at me. He's like, I want to see my top two abs. And I've told this story before, and I'm like, top two abs? I've never heard that before. And I kind of laughed at him. And I was like, all right, well, like, what are you doing? And he kind of went through his week for me. And in a nutshell, without getting too technical, I kind of cut everything back by at least half to, maybe 2/3. It was like, we really just kind of minimized the mistakes and still allowed those cocktails here and there, or a little dessert here and there, but focused on just some, just focused on some basics, just making sure we're hitting our protein, and making sure we're consistent with our training, and we're getting our steps, and maybe implementing in some higher intensity cardio in with some of the easier stuff that he was doing, and hydration and vegetables and just basic stuff, but still allowed him to hit where he need do the things that he felt like he was still that he was enjoying. And I mean, honestly, 3 to 4 weeks later, he came back in, and we started seeing this line on his top abs. And he looked at me and he was like, "Holy shit, I can't believe this. What now?" And I was like, this was a while ago. And it was a big light bulb went off in my head, because I was like, oh my God, if we can just give someone a little bit and make them realize that it's easier than they think, and then, allow them to come in feeling actually excited about where they are, they're going to want to do more and take that to the next step. And I think that's a big mistake that most coaches do, is that they're just always focused on handing you like this template that, has worked for them. Or like, that's why I say the difference between coaches and influencers. Like, you'll see a lot of influencers online who, are in great shape and they look good, and they're just, like, repurposing things that's worked for them. And sometimes it works really well, but like, when you run into that puzzle or you run into that obstacle, are they gonna be able to help you think that your way through, that maze? And that's something that most coaches, that I know do a really good job of. And that's the difference between the two. So, I don't think it's always coming in with this high level, material. I think it's, as a coach, you need to recognize who you're working with. And as a coach, you need to say, hey, listen, this is what you need to be doing now. That's why when I am, even now, like my private coaching business is very minimal. Like I do not want to work with many people because my energy is put into so many different areas of our business. But most people don't know this. I take on a couple of normal people, like normal non-celebrity people, maybe one or two of them throughout a 3 month span because I'm like, all right, that's cool. I like their story. They want to help. They're willing to come in and do this agreement with me. Obviously, they're going to pay for it, and my calls have to be on a Zoom. They like I need to see their face. I need to like see their expressions. I need to see their confidence levels. I need to see their body language. And for me, that's really important because I can tell when someone's talking to me now, whether what they're telling me is bullshit or not. It's like, all right, well, really? Like I had a guy recently. He's like, I probably good about 95% of the time. I'm like, no, you don't. And he was like this. I'm like, no, you don't. Like you do not eat well 95% of the time. You probably eat well 65 to 70% of the time. And he just was like looking at me. I'm like, so you're automatic right now. If I went through your eating with you, just admit it. And he's like, okay, you got me. Like you just know as a good coach, you just know who's full of shit or not. And how are you gonna, are you gonna call that person on it? Well, if they have a goal in mind and they're trying to fight to get to that goal, okay. If you're working with a celebrity that is, or an individual that is really where they need to be, and they're doing the training piece of it, they're eating well 80% of the time and they're getting away with it, well, we don't need to make them miserable and remove all those things in life that they like to do. So it's individualistic. It really is personal. That's what they call it, like personal training. It's like, all right, this is for you. A good coach is going to help figure that out.
How would you define your coaching style, and how would you advise people start to identify theirs?
My coaching style, I'm not a screamer, I'm not a yeller. Probably more body language with me. I'll kind of walk over to someone and I can end up like getting really close to their face and just start like whispering to them. I think it's not about how much I'm going to say. It's probably more of what I'm going to say. I get annoyed with most coaches where it's a little drill I do when I'm doing some of my live seminars and I want to see them coach someone else. I'll ask them to coach a movement and they're just like, bop, 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 bop. And I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, you're giving every great cue in the book, but how do you know they need it? You didn't even ask to see a demonstration. Like, you didn't even ask them if they know how to do the movement, right? It's like I'm sitting down with you and it's like suddenly it's a goblet squat. Like, Jonathan, you ever goblet squat? Yeah, Don, I do them all the time. Or can you show me? Like, why am I going to turn around to you and be like, what we're going to do now is we're going to hold the kettlebell in front of us. And I want to do a hip dominant movement. And we want to make sure the knees don't go valgus. And we want to keep the knees in a specific position and turn the toes out. Like, quiet. It's like, it's a bad thing to do, especially when creating content. Just saw a major equipment company repurpose some content on an individual talking about some form of a step up. And I watched it because I'm a student to this and I like to always see, and within the first 10 seconds, I was becoming annoyed by the content because this guy was just talking, talking about eccentrics, talking about all of this stuff. And I'm basically saying to myself, wow, we're 30 seconds in and this guy hasn't even started demonstrating the movement. Like, we all know people are going to be gone within the first seconds. How are you going to grab them? So, if people are this sensitive to that on social media, how do you think they're feeling in person? Because when you're on a gym floor or someone else is on a gym floor, you have an audience. There are people in the stands. There are people doing cardio watching you. When I worked at Equinox back in 99, I can't tell you how many people would grab me and say, you know why I'm working with you? I really like how you dealt with so-and-so. I was 21, 22 years old. It's like you just seem genuine and you seem like you cared and your body language and you seem, How long were you watching for? Probably about a month and a half. And I'm like, holy shit. Like these were lessons I learned at a young age. That's why I feel like I think every coach needs at some point in their career to work at a big box gym. I really do. I think they need to learn the lessons of working under a training manager. I think they need to go into corporate meetings. I think they need to understand membership. I think they need to train at high volume. I think they need to be in there at uncomfortable hours in the morning and leaving at uncomfortable hours at night and taking that block of time during the day and trying to figure out how to utilize that most efficiently, effectively to where it's going to help grow your business. I just, when people contact me and they're like, I want to do what you do, I almost at times, I should really copy and paste like 10 paragraphs. I should one day when I'm on like the runway and on a delay, just like type out like, well, okay, like go work at a big box gym and you got to get fired from that gym or you got to leave and you got to rebuild your book and you're going to start your one-on-one business. And I think you should go home to home. I really believe the path that I did now looking back on it, what took a long time, but I really feel like I checked so many boxes. There's so many people in the industry that didn't do what I did, working at a big box gym, going home to home. Dude, New York City. I went as far uptown as 95th Street, as far downtown as Battery Park in any given day, as far east as York Avenue and as far west as 10th Avenue. So have to travel that way on foot. That's like all of Manhattan, right? So like doing that, I was in the golf fitness business. I opened several clubs. I opened one which is more one-on-one base, one that was more group training base. I started an app company back in like the 2010 area. I partnered up with celebrities. I'm virtual online now. It's like I really had to check a lot of different boxes, and I'm really proud of that because that's why I feel like I'm one of the few that can speak through experience. Oh, and on top of it all, I did it in New York City. It's like, sorry, like I never like to say anything that sounds aggressive or say an indefinite. It's a different animal when you're doing it in New York City. It's a different world. The competition, the price per foot, the real estate taxes, the landlords, it's a different element. So that's kind of where I've curated my career now, is that I feel like I'm able to talk about this stuff because I've gone through some successes and I've gone through a lot of failures in all those different categories.
I think it's most apt. Any successful creator or entrepreneur, whoever they are, they resonate best with their audiences when they're speaking from experience because it's rooted in actual results, evidence, something to suggest this is what I've done and therefore. What drew me to your content wasn't the celebrity aspect, it was actually the superhero aspect. That's just how I became aware of it, right? What kept me there was probably like thinking about it, there's a level of professionalism and just brevity and direct to the point aspect that your content, especially in like 2020 2021, when I was just really starting to wrap my head around what is fitness. My journey kind of started with basic bro splits and then into CrossFit, where I was introduced to programming. And then I picked up functional fitness through an individual, his content, J Marinac, JTM underscore fit. And that changed my life. And then I started to come across more professional creators like yourself when I started to realize that fitness online is a thing that you could actually learn how to do. And the way that you would speak to each movement and how you would program your workouts, those were the little thing. And also the dynamic between you and the people that you trained with. I remember there was a banquet that I attended where one of the raffles that you could win was, I don't know, maybe like a membership to Drive 495 at the
Yeah,
time. And
sure. Yeah, we used to give those away. Yeah,
I
I remember
was
that.
like, put my name in for that. But
Yeah, it's awesome.
as we kind of shift gears, I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you about superhero training, just as I geek out a bit. You've trained quite a few: Sebastian Stan, Ryan Reynolds, Hugh Jackman. What's your mindset when preparing a celebrity, an athlete, for a particular character, and how do you curate those specific programs? What are the things you consider?
Well, I think the first thing that it's like you get that phone call or someone stops in to see you and they're like, hey, this is what I'm getting ready for this role. And then I'm like, all right, well, what does that mean? Like, what are you trying to create? What does the director want? What are they trying to, curate out of your physique right now? What do you have to look like? A lot of times, I remember sitting down with Liev Schreiber, and we're in front of Google, or I remember Dave Harbour coming down, and he's pulling up this picture of this Russian shot putter. And granted, I trained him for Hellboy, and he was in a prosthetic suit, but he still had look a certain way and feel a certain way underneath the suit. And it was more about resiliency. But I think understanding that character and what that character needs to look like is something that's very overlooked. I mean, everyone always talks about the movement screening and the health questionnaire, and they always want to say, all the right stuff, which are all things that I do. And if they're red flags, I would call in our medical team, and we would look at that, and then we would figure out, all right, we have a job to do. We got to get this person in shape. What do we have to do to work around those issues, and how do we fix those issues? So, but I think the first thing is really understanding, what are we trying to create? Because I've had people come in, and I would look at them after the conversation and be like, aren't you kind of here already? And they're like, yeah, like, in all fairness, I gotta be fit, and I gotta be in shape, and I've got 2 months to get ready. And I'm like, all right, this is more for me. It's always about resiliency. And it's always about movement quality. So I'm like, listen, let's just get in and train. Do we need, even looking at your diet now? Like, I feel like that you're probably pretty far along in a good place. And let's give it a few weeks, and let's see our body takes place and change. And if we have to kind of turn up the volume a little bit, we can. It's like, sometimes you don't want to overshoot either. I mean, I've had roles for people where we've gotten them a little too muscular, and weeks out they're calling me up going, like, or too big, and we're getting a call out going, I remember when I was getting Dave Harbour ready for Hellboy, we got a call, and it was like, he's losing too much weight. And I'm like, no, he's not. He's losing too much weight. I'm like, he was 250 when he started. He's 249 now. He doesn't fit in the prosthetic suit. I'm like, okay, that's not losing too much weight. His dimensions are off. Where is he off? And they would tell me, and I'm getting on a call with him. He's like, what do I do? I'm like, start having dessert every night. It's like, and we laugh about it. And you got to make adjustments, but it's never, that's what most people don't understand. It's like, it's not always about, making someone look like Brad Pitt in Fight Club. It's roles. Sometimes you got to put on body fat. You got to lose. I was talking with Sebastian Stan yesterday. We were on a call for 45 minutes, and he got ready for that Donald Trump role that he just played in. And he's like, man, I had to put on a ton of body fat. And, now I'm, trying to get it down. And that's just part of roles. Sometimes that's part of what you have to do to get ready and to be believable. That's what's interesting about Hollywood. I mean, I'm someone that I don't like, which is what's ironic, is I don't like these short-term changes. I hate when someone comes to me and they're like, I have to lose 100 pounds. I'm like, oh my God, like, oh, I hate what I do. And that's why I like slow, steady investments. That's why it's kind of ironic that I'm doing what I do, but I'm good at it. And I know how to have people make the adjustments they need to make to get from point A to point B. I've just kind of always had a good eye for it. I developed a better eye for it. And I just understand. I can kind of look at the body, and I can look at what they were doing and get a general understanding for their intensity and their frequency and their lifestyle. And then based off of that, I'm like, all right, we need this. And sometimes that might be increasing volume. Sometimes that might be lowering volume. Sometimes that might be increasing frequency. Sometimes that might be removing frequency. It's never a one size fits all. And that's what I love about it. It's just this consistent puzzle that every single time it's like, all right, what do we have to do for this person?
There's this one channel on YouTube. I don't know if you've come across it, The Pioneer. You might want to check it out. He's this pioneer. Yeah, he's this exercise scientist. I don't even know if I'm doing him justice, but he breaks down the way different superheroes train. And so he's known for like his Batman breakdowns where he'll go into like the cognitive aspect, like, to work on juggling or, the different type of martial arts styles, how, the type of mobility routine. It's kind of branded, but at the same time, like he's written books on it too. So you might want to check it out. That's what it's.
I've seen some guys who are going on and using that, and I'm not insulting the pioneer here, but I've seen some coaches go on and they're trying to repurpose, right? Like, this is how so and so trains. As a professional, I almost look at that and I frown on that a bit, because one, they don't know, right? They don't. They're making assumptions, and they don't have all the details,
100%.
right? They don't know what's going on in their life. So when someone turns around and they're trying to break down how someone else trains, it's kind of fake information. Now, unless, and I have had people turn around and be like, I'm going to break down how, make this, let's say Ryan Reynolds, because you brought him up. I'm going to break down how Ryan Reynolds trains. He's trained by Don Saladino, and I know this is what Don does. And he actually went in and he took different articles, and he may have quoted me or he've done it. And then I'm like, okay, that's cool. But like I had one guy recently who took Ryan and used his face. I'm going to tell you how this guy trains. And I know, and I do CrossFit, and I know Ryan trains this way, and he can get to this physique by doing training 3 days a week. And everything this guy said was so far from what Ryan did. So though this type of training may have given this individual the success for themselves personally, I feel like the information is one, false, and two, it's really misleading because you're not really like, if you want to talk about how someone trained, at least know the information on how they train. Don't sit there and make assumptions. And sure as hell, don't put up a picture of that person to attract more people to your online site so you can get more sales. And that's something I don't really respect in the industry. I feel like there needs to be a level of authenticity. Even now with Hugh Jackman, I trained Hugh Jackman 17 years ago for 1 year, and I love Hugh. And I have so much to be grateful, but Hugh's working with someone else now that's, she's fantastic. So, or Hugh loves her. I've never met her, but I've seen her stuff. I've seen stuff that he's done with her, and I'm like, great job. I'm not going to sit here and take credit. And even when I get quoted in articles right now, people are like, he trains Hugh Jackman. I'm like, no, I trained Hugh Jackman. Right? And I want to be very clear here that like there needs to be a higher standard that's held in this business. And if you have not worked with someone, you should not be assuming that's what it took for them to get there. You might have trained someone that got them to that place or got them to a similar body type. That doesn't mean you know what it took to train Blake Lively for Shallows or Sebastian Stan or Annie Hathaway for a role or Emily Blunt or John Krasinski or these people. You don't know. Very few people know what it takes. And I think when you're talking to most celebrity coaches that are very well respected, Gunnar being one of them, right? My buddy, Ben Bruno being one of them. I think we all see eye to eye on that. There's a level of respect that we have, and it's like Ben and I have passed clients to each. I've called Ben like, hey, Ben, Blake's coming to town. Can you work with her? Great. Don, Chelsea's coming to town. Can you work with her? Or Timberlake's coming into your gym. Could you work? And God, it's like, let's say this. Let's say they were ever like, let's take a picture and put it up. I'd be like, I'd be texting Ben like, Ben, we're going to throw this up, but I'm giving you credit on it, right? Like I would say something like, hey, Ben, thanks for trusting me with so-and-so. Right? There's this level of, respect that I think you have to have out there, and a level of humility you got to hold yourself to. And a lot of people are just, like I said early on in this conversation, a lot of people are just concerned with making withdrawals. Mm-hmm. What can you do for me? And the great coaches, the ones that I know and I'm still really good friends with, they're about making deposits. And that's who I want to surround myself with.
I love the way that you phrase that. And I think this entire interview has been a lesson in professionalism, especially for an up-and-comer, someone to see the standard that they have to hold themselves to. And reputation was also something that we touched on, and I think you did an even more effective job of driving it home right now. A couple more questions for you. And side note, you should still check out The Pioneer, because as much as you outlined, I totally think you'd enjoy it.
And I'm sure, and now I'm curious because I want to see if this person, are they on there and are they giving credit where credit's due? Are they highlighting certain people that have done that work, right? Or are they turning around and are they making assumptions and are they claiming them to be like very definitive? Like, all right, nope, this is what they do. Because if that's what someone does, I think anyone out there needs to recognize that that's they're making assumptions, and that's not fair. But if the Pioneer's on there and that person's giving credit and they're and they're making these or they're saying, oh, well, I know they did this type of martial arts training and they want to highlight that martial arts training. I think that's cool, but again, it's a fine line,
Right.
and clickbait nowadays, it's anyone is just they're just people are selling their own souls to just try and get eyeballs onto their page, and I don't respect that.
Further going down the rabbit hole of indulging my curiosity, what was the difference between training Ryan for Deadpool 1, Deadpool 2, and now Deadpool 3? What were the goals and strategies between each movie?
Well, the first one, in a way, he had to prove himself a bit, right? Like the concept wasn't really, um, we didn't, no one knew how much of a success it was going to become at that level. That was also, what was it, 8, 9 years ago? I mean, different person, different size family, different level of stresses in his life with business and time and I think it just, when I say stressors, I don't necessarily mean like he was under all the stress. I mean, like, yeah, there were, he didn't have as many businesses as he has now, and he wasn't the entrepreneur as he is now. And he was 8 years younger, which to me, like, great. Like, I think our training now is as good, if not better. I think there's things that we incorporated. I think these things that he recognized. I think there's also a trust. I think, we've been working together now for 15 years, and I think every time we figured it out. I think every obstacle that we had, we were able to figure it out. So I think it was an evolution. And I think what's fun about it now is when it's time to go, we're just kind of like, okay, like he's good. I'll design the program and I'll do some tune-up sessions with him and I'm checking on him. But he's very self-sufficient and he takes, the work, my program and he runs with it. And, we'll do check-ins and, I'll fly like I flew to London for Deadpool 3 and spent a week with him just checking up, checking in. So, every program was a bit different. We launched Deadpool 1. He allowed me to launch that, which was great. So that's being sold on my site. Deadpool 2 was launched, pretty recently, and Deadpool 3 will launch with the movie. So, there are a little bit of changes there. Like maybe Deadpool 1 was a little bit more of that bro split, but there is something I like to call carryover. So even if it looks like you're doing legs once in a week, later in the week, we do have some lower body implemented in there. So, it's a term I always use called carryover, where we'll even if it doesn't look like you have two primary leg days, you might have like a more robust leg day, and then on Thursday might be some higher volume deadlifts, which we all know involves the lower body pretty heavily. So, I think the programs are fun, and I think it needs to be enjoyable by people. And sometimes you start doing something for a period of time, and you just feel stagnant with it. So for me, every movie I wanted him to go in there with kind of this fresh outlook, this fresh feeling, this fresh focus, and to be able to focus on new qualities and improve those qualities. And as soon as the movie ends, it's like, okay, we got to make a little bit of an adjustment and pivot a bit and allow his body to kind of recover. Because I mean, the shooting schedule is brutal. I mean, no one understands. I mean, people think I could tell you right now that working with a celeb is in my opinion, way harder than working with an athlete. Way more difficult. It really is. I mean, when you're dealing with an athlete schedule, you're dealing with something that's set in stone. Granted, there's injuries, but the celebs have injuries. Like I've had plenty of celebs that have broken arms and broken necks and have done their own stunts, and I've had massive issues on set. But you can when you're up at 4:30 in the morning getting a workout in because your call time's at 7 and you're shooting all day and then there's weather issues and then you're on set now till 9, 10 and you got to rinse and repeat for the next 6, 8, 12 weeks. Tell me how easy that is. And then the second the movie ends, you got to go fly to another time zone and you're away from your family. And there are a lot of challenges. But I think most people, the misconception is that they have all this money and that they have private chefs traveling with them and their trainers traveling with them. It's not that easy. These movies have budgets. Chefs are not always traveling with them, or they're, most of the time they're not traveling with them. They might have a chef on the, on the staff that's cooking for everyone. And, that's obviously convenient, but it's way more difficult than most people think.
And then one final question for you, sir.
Sure.
This is a question that I pose to all my guests. If the future version of you, from 10 years from now, assuming he's in that ideal spot, were to fly in and offer you some advice in order to get there, what do you think he would say to you?
I'd probably say to myself, just stay on path. And when I say stay on path, that means also being malleable. And I think sometimes the things that I might fight in life are my best qualities. It's like, all right, the fact that I'm not complacent, the fact that I'm always thinking that's going to be taken from me, has allowed me to really respect, this industry, and it's allowing me to really respect what it is I do. Yeah, fortunately, things are continuing to improve, but I'm completely aware that at any point I'm expendable. Um, things can be taken away from me, and life can, change for the worse. So I think understanding that is something that I'm, I've learned to relax a little bit with in life, but I also understand it's a good quality of mine to have because it keeps me wanting to always be sharp and do it better. Um, got a daughter now; she'll be 17 in August. We're looking at colleges. My son's 15, soon to be 16 in November. He's turning a little bit of a man right now, so it's been fun. But finding that work-life balance is something that I've really, I work a lot, but when I'm with my family, it's like that phone goes away, and it's time to focus on them, and that's something that it's taken me a long time to be able to do that, but I'm proud of myself for that. Yeah, I just think, learning to relax, like going back to myself 10 years earlier. Now it's like, relax, it's going to be okay. That would have been the message I would have given myself 10 years earlier. Like, you're working hard, you're doing the right thing, you're a good person, keep going, keep going, keep going. Almost the same. It's almost the same advice, right? It's just on a different level and a different scale now.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Don Saladino, please let them know where they can keep up with your journey.
Don Saladino on Instagram, donsaladino.com, my website. DM me if you have any questions.